My guys, how's it going? Listen, I hope you've not been having a particularly great week. I'm just not being nasty. I just mean that today's film, it's gonna knock you off that nice sweet spot, right? Because I have a film to talk about today. You know, sometimes you watch films that make you really, just happy to be human. You just think, oh, these great things that humans do, really life-affirming stuff. It's a big old beaming smile on your face. How to describe the opposite of that feeling? I've had a bigger smile on my face watching any of the Tory leadership contests over here in the UK for the past month than I did when this film finished. That is to say, I haven't smiled during the leadership contest. Speak No Evil is a new Danish horror film from director Christian Tafdrup. I've definitely just butchered your name. I'm so sorry about that, dude. And I gotta come clean on this one. I didn't know this film existed or was a thing until very, very recently when one of my friends, Alex, over at Nordic Watchlist, snuck into my DMs and was like, hey, Stu, you should just watch this. And then he really cautiously snuck away. I mean, it was a text DM, so I don't know that he did that, but after watching the film, I know that he did that. It was the DM equivalent of pulling a pin out of a grenade and just, how you doing, dude? But before we get into the review, I gotta shout him out. Go over and check out Nordic Watchlist, his website. Dude kills it, and he's actually just put up an interview with the director of this one, which is a really fascinating read, so I definitely recommend checking it out down there. And if you're a fan of Nordic cinema and you haven't already, check out the website and just stay on it for as long as you can. Just never leave the website. So this review's for you, Alex. You've ruined my soul. So in case you haven't been able to tell, this horror film has a very dark touch to it. Slathered in darkness. It's essentially about a couple that bump into another couple when they're abroad in Tuscany on a family holiday, and when they get back home, they still keep in touch with the family, and they are finally invited over to the other couple's house in Sweden, and the film is a look at what happens while those two families are living together in that house. The first thing to note here, and the first thing that really impressed me about this one, is the kind of slow pace and the ramping up of all of the horror elements and all of the creepiness of this film. And it is a really engrossing journey at that. It's one of those stories and one of those narratives that sort of drops you quite early on into this feeling that something's off or that something's gonna go tits up. I mean, we know something's going tits up because we're watching a horror film. So never under any pretense that this is just going to be happy family fun times, the movie. But it hooks you with that kind of familiar feeling of awkwardness that you get meeting other people. And I'm not a dad, I'm not married, I don't have kids, I don't have a family like the people in this film do. But the situations towards the beginning of this film that the couple gets themselves into, they do have that kind of familiar feeling of social awkwardness between you and other people that you don't quite know, but you do know, and you're in that weird point of shouldn't we do these things? And I like horror films that sort of take those familiar and quite broad things that we all kind of know to some extent in our lives and really just sort of squeeze it for as much as they can in the genre. And this one does do that very much. And the screenplay and direction here do a really good job of getting into your head before certain things have been revealed to you as a viewer, which is a line which can very easily be stumbled upon in directing horrors. You don't want it to feel too predictable, but at the same time, you need to have the viewer sort of anticipating stuff. And the anticipation of where this film ends up going is one of its strongest suits, and one of the reasons that the climax ends up being so effective. And the climax is ruddy effective in that it's a very dark, not particularly great look at humanity. Let's just put it like that. A very nihilistic view on humankind, but also kind of a peculiar and weird sort of cautionary tale about, I guess, being nice. Thematically, in that sense, it does feel like it's treading a lot of ground that we have seen tread before in films. It's got an undeniable sort of funny games feel to it, and I've no doubt that that's a big inspiration. And a few times in the film, that definitely did sort of threaten to undermine what it was going for, and threaten to get in the way of the punches that the film's trying to land on you. But thankfully, it's doing it all so effectively that it manages to keep you on board and manages to keep you hooked into, I guess, the kind of central mystery of the film and the central tension of the film. And in terms of the horror that comes from that central mystery, it is a very unnerving film, to say the least, that did really get under my skin. It's very effective in those small kind of chills moments, as opposed to the big horror moments that you might expect from big budget films. And a lot of that also comes down to the location of this film. That feeling that it captures really, really well is being somewhere that you're not supposed to be, right? Which is a feeling that I think anyone's had when they've gone abroad, right? But you just sort of pair that with the feelings of unfamiliarity with another couple, with other people, and it's that tension and that central dynamic there which is so ripe for horror here. And also just a very scary house. I've got to say it. I'm sure it's a lovely house in real life, but I am a fan of when horror films find particularly creepy and eerie locations, and this is definitely one of those. Just any house in the woods. I want to steer clear of that shit, my guy. I would be absolutely nowhere near that house quicker than you can say, what in the name of shit? But that's another thing I really appreciate about this one as well. It's a film which does a pretty good job overall of avoiding a lot of the traps that similar films in this genre have fallen into. It makes the tension in a film that much more engaging when you're not sort of rolling your eyes every second because they're just being dumb as hell. That isn't to say that the film doesn't invite you at certain points to roll your eyes at the characters. It's definitely aware that these people are doing things that, you know, are going to get them fucked. But there is definitely a difference between a filmmaker that's able to control that and do that on their own terms, rather than a filmmaker that's sort of accidentally doing loads of dumb shit. The biggest problem, it's not really a problem with the film, but the biggest hurdle I think this film's going to have going for it is just that pure sense of just intense pain you sort of feel watching it. It leans very heavily into a very kind of hopeless, dark, nihilistic view, which is obviously not going to be nice for some people to watch. So I would not be surprised if people just shut down and go, nope, that was horrible, never ever watching it again. But I don't mind films that are sort of horrible if it's done well, I guess. It doesn't feel hopeless just for the sake of being edgy and controversial. It feels like a piece. It feels intentional and it feels well earned, I suppose. But ultimately, my biggest takeaway from this film was that just sense of things suck, man. Things just, people could do some really sucky shit, can't they? It's definitely one of those films where you finish it and the credits go and you're just gonna have to sit there for a bit and definitely find the happiest thing you can possibly find to watch afterwards. Ultimately, I was just really, really impressed with this film. I think it has a lot of great things going for it. Not the best I've seen in this kind of, I don't know, what do we call it? People suck genre. But a worthwhile addition to it. One that's got a lot of merit to it in different places, and certainly one which you won't shake off for a while. Like, I'm still thinking about a lot of this film. As I said before, head on over to Nordic Watchlist. I've put a link down there. There should be something popping up. If there isn't, bad stew. But you'll be able to find an interview with the film's director, which I thoroughly recommend checking out. Some definitely insightful bits in there. But most importantly, if you've seen the film, let me know what you thought about it down below. I'm very interested to see what people have to say about this one, because it's definitely a film that's doing something, huh? If you enjoyed this video and you do want to see me talk about more shit, go ahead and click subscribe. Buttons down there. My socials are down there and my letterbox, so you can check out what I've been watching in real bloody time. I'll see you guys soon for some more thoughts on more films, but until next time, I need a hot chocolate and a blanket stat.